Hello YouTubers, welcome to Big Buddha is Watching. I'm Big Buddha. And today, seems like a while since I've actually had the DVD to hand, but I do in this case. I'm looking at The Piano, Jane Campion's 1993 gothic melodrama. Her words, not mine. Before I start, just a quick apology to the actor Peter Mullen, who throughout my entire Top of the Lake review I kept referring to as Peter Mulligan. That's not his name, Peter Mullen. Very, very fine Scottish actor. And usually when I make errors like that in my reviews, it's a slip of the tongue. I usually mean the the person I'm saying, but for some reason I'm just slipping up throughout. But in this case, no, I genuinely thought his name was Peter Mulligan, but it's not. It's Mullen. So just wanted to set the record straight on that front. But the piano, the reason I'm reviewing the piano, as I said in the last video, is it's another Jane Campion work that I saw a long time ago, probably a couple of years after it came out when it first aired on TV. I saw that and another of her films, An Angel at My Table, around the same time, and they both very much impressed me to the point where I said, oh, I should seek out more of her stuff. So it only took me 20 years to get around to it. I might try and, after doing this actually, I might try and track down An Angel at My Table and give that one a rewatch. And I know I've got other films of hers on the way, so expect more Campion reviews. But I wanted to look at The Piano because it was a film that I remember being quite impressed by when I saw it, probably around 95, 96, something like that. But I hadn't seen it since. And it is a gothic melodrama. It's tonally, it's sort of in the Wuthering Heights mould of storytelling. You know, it's a 19th century set tale. It follows the Holly Hunter's character Ada as she moves from Scotland to New Zealand, where she's been wedded off to Sam Neill, and the film picks up with her arriving on the shores of New Zealand, literally on the shores of New Zealand on this epic windswept beach, with just her daughter in tow, and Flora, played by Anna Paquin, who of course would later go on to be in X-Men and True Blood, and of course her piano, which she's brought with her. The piano's too cumbersome to take back to Neil's home, and as I guess was the view of the male figures of the time, your wife was seen as their property, and so was it, all their property was automatically seen as yours. So Harvey Keitel is a neighbouring farmer there. He offers up land in exchange for the piano. He decides he wants the piano for himself, but really it's because he has designs on Ada himself. So once he acquires the piano, he says he offers the chance to have it back in exchange for piano lessons. However, these piano lessons mainly involve her just playing the piano, and they're really voyeuristic exercises for him. He says he wants her to play the piano whilst he does what he wants, whilst he watches. I'll let your imagination go from there about what that means. So yeah, I mean, it's although it's an original story and from an original screenplay by Campion, it does have a very sort of English parochial classic literature feel. Sort of in the style of the Bronte sisters, but Campion being a New Zealand filmmaker, she set the film in New Zealand, and that's what really lends it a unique feel. Um, Also, Campion's own sensibilities really lend it a unique feel as well. I was very surprised, as I think a lot of people were, by the amount of sex in the tale. I remember, I think I watched this with my mum and dad because my mum's very much a costume drama sort of person, but she, I think. I don't know, but I imagine she was expecting something along the lines of Pride and Prejudice here, and um, uh, uh, I think maybe I was as well. She was quite happy, I think, expecting Pride and Prejudice. I was pleasantly surprised that Pride and Prejudice. This was not. This was kind of. Eye-opening at the time, to the realization, okay, costume dramas aren't boring fuddy-duddy things about people. Well, I was going to say about people. All right, they weren't all about doing cross stitches in drawing rooms and the men retiring to smoke cigars. There's you could inject some very raunchy and weighty material into a costume drama, and that's really what sparked my interest. I was quite surprised by the amount of sex and the amount of nudity on display in the film as well, and also. I mean, Campion. If you watch a lot of her work, she's not squeamish about portraying sex and nudity on screen, and she's also not squeamish about putting bodily functions on screen as well. I remember seeing. I haven't seen the whole film, but I remember seeing parts of her first film, Sweetie, and that I think that was the first time I'd ever seen any full frontal male nudity in a film before. I thought up until that point that you just because you just didn't get it in films that there wasn't any full frontal nudity in films. Although I think I'd seen Life of Brian already, which so why I thought that I don't know. So I remember being quite shocked seeing at the sight of full frontal nudity in that film, and there's also a part in that where a woman, shock horror, she farts in a man's face. This was the most revelatory thing to me when I was 15. So, oh wow, you can put that in a film and okay, But I mean, I'm not talking about Sweetie, but I mean, in this film, I mean, you get Harvey Keitel in full frontal shots. You get Holly Hunter in full frontal nude shots as well. And the thing that really stuck in my memory for some reason has been the most shocking thing I saw in this film, which is weird considering what I've just said and considering this is also a film where a woman gets her finger chopped off. Funny enough, I didn't remember that, but I did remember this. There's a scene in this of an old woman taking a piss. I'd never seen anything like that in a film before, and that to me was oddly the most shocking and the most memorable thing about the film. I think that really says something about how prudish and repressed we can be sometimes as film watchers. That we'll happily watch countless scenes of violence and bad language and sex on film, but when it comes to things like bodily functions and the nudity of the lower half of the human body, then we become oddly squeamish in a funny sort of way. Um, I don't know if I mentioned it. Sorry, in my introduction of the plot. Holly Hunter gives a largely wordless performance in this. I mean, literally, a character doesn't speak, save for at the start and the end. You get a bit of narration, which I think is Hunter putting on a Scottish accent, and she says that what you're hearing is my mind's voice, because the character doesn't speak. She's not. It's not that she can't speak. She doesn't speak through choice. Um, she hasn't spoken since she was 6 years old. Hunter actually learnt not only learnt sign language, but she learnt sign language appropriate to the era for the film, and it's a real testament. I mean, she won an Oscar for this, and so did Paquin. Actually, Paquin became the second youngest person ever to win the Academy Award. First, I think, being Tatum O'Neal for Paper Moon in the 70s. But Hunter, she gives a pretty much solely wordless performance throughout the film, and it's a real testament to Hunter's acting ability and her screen presence that she comes across as that she really resonates throughout the film and the narrative. And she really, I mean, when you think of this film, you basically get the image of her, of Ada. She's very, for such a small stature woman, she's a very powerful screen presence. I guess the reason for making her silence is it was kind of representative of how women were silenced through history, basically, and especially in the 19th century, which in middle class society, at least, is largely the most repressed era in human history, and it's right for drama when you talk about someone's sexual awakening, which is what this film's about, or more than one character's sexual awakening in a way. When you put that in a 19th century setting, it becomes explosive because of the almost puritanical world that middle class society was at the time. It becomes a very potent mix for drama. Yeah, so the two male leads, you have Harvey Keitel and Sam Neill. Interestingly, an interesting casting, those two in these roles, I'd say, because I think they could have reversed the roles in a way, and it would have worked. Well, maybe not as well, because I often think that actors, when they're playing against type, you get more vivid portrayals because they have more to prove in a way. But certainly Neil at the time seemed, early 90s Jurassic Park era Neil was much more the romantic lead, whereas Keitel might have seemed more like the villainous type. But I guess Keitel, I mean, he kind of plays a rugged, earthy type. He plays it with a Scottish accent, which is one of the things I guess you've got to overlook and suspend your disbelief when watching this film. He doesn't quite convince as a Scotsman, unfortunately. But that aside, he does convince as a kind of earthy farmer type. He has Maori makeup, so you get the impression of a character who's kind of moved overseas and gone native almost. You know, he's Kevin Costner in Dances with Wolves, and he represents the sort of rugged alpha male type, which I guess. I guess in that respect, he's better casting as than Sam Neill would have been. But what's interesting about the two male leads in this? All the characters have arcs, but the male leads are complete 180s. They're almost their arcs. Shut up. The Keitel's character, where in the first half of the story, he could almost feel like a predatory type, and so that's very much how he starts in the story. But by the end of it, he's then become the romantic interest, and it takes a writer director like Campion, and with her skill behind the camera and behind the word processor as well, to convincingly portray a character, because it's a very delicate balance when you have scenes early on where you have scenes where it could go either way. You think that the situation is leading towards sexual abuse, but Keitel's character sort of catches himself very early. He sort of at the midpoint of the film, he has a moral revelation that, and he doesn't go far, and he offers to give the piano back, and because he actually says to Ada, you know, I'm turning you into a whore, and I don't want that. I want you to want me for myself. But she's become smitten with him by this time. She's become smitten with his earthy nature, and so a romance blossoms, and it's a convincing romance as well. You do want to see these characters get together and be happy. So there's an interesting sort of 180 arc for Keitel's character, and there's the same can be said of Sam Neill's character, who starts off as the perfect gentleman in a sort of way, but tragically, you know, he's not loved by his new wife, and this over the course of the film, this gradually sort of eats away at him. There's a suggestion, but obviously it's never stated because things weren't stated at the time. But there's a suggestion of male impotence there, and then by the end of the film, Neil's character, he's become more animalistic than Keitel's in a way. It leads to one scene in particular of unfortunate, shocking violence. Ada's art, which is her piano playing, which is all done by Hunter herself. And as well as learning the sign language, she also learned to play everything on the piano. And what you hear, I think it was re-recorded later on, but what you hear musically in the film is actually Hunter herself playing, and that also goes some way to convincingly portray Keitel's change, because her music and her arts awaken something, a passion in him that also goes some way to explaining his arc as a character. The Sam Neill's got some sort of henpecking ant characters in the film who talk about how they don't like Ada's music because it gets inside your soul. Why would you want music to get inside your soul? um, so yeah, it's a well structured screenplay, and once the story really works, once Ada's story is set in motion. I mean, what Ada's story, what she wants is basically the piano back, and when she realizes there's a way to get the piano back, that sets off the chain of events that really inform the rest of the story and the rest of the film, and it all falls into place beautifully. It's a very engaging story, well told, well written, and well shot. Beautiful cinematography by I don't have. I don't have my pad at hand, so I can't tell you the cinematographer's name. If I had if I could be bothered to learn things like Photoshop, I could put up like a little footnote subtitle at this point. But hey, get on Wikipedia, look at it, do your own homework. Why do I have to do all the research for these? Whoever the cinematographer was on this, he did a bang up job. He you'd expect every film now after Lord of the Rings to that shot in New Zealand to look like Lord of the Rings, to have that same kind of quality, but here you don't get that. It's this feels more like a David Lean thing. It feels more like a sort of old-fashioned epic. You get scenes on the beach with these huge crashing waves. You get scenes out in the forest of people in Victorian dress getting stuck in the mud, surrounded by trees and mist, and it really lends to the gothic epic quality that the film has. I want to talk briefly about the final scene in the film as well, because it's a very interesting one. There comes a point in a lot of great movies towards the end where the central protagonist has a brush with death, whether it be actual death or a brush or a moment where you think the character has met their demise, and this happens sort of in the last 5 minutes of the film. It's difficult to say without revealing too much about it. Ada's arc is is basically her growing up. I think Ada is a character who's stuck in childhood and still stuck in her childish games in a way. Her silence is really just a petulant child's game that's spiraled out of control into adulthood, and the piano, I think, represents her childhood in a way, and Harvey Keitel's character represents her coming of age and her relinquishing childhood and coming to terms with her own adulthood and embracing her own adulthood, and the film ends with her choosing Keitel over the piano, and there's an ending where on the surface it looks like a happy Hollywood ending, but a possible reading of this could be a flash of fantasy from the afterlife. It's hard to explain without going into specifics, but a possible reading of the ending, it could be that Hunter's character could have died, and indeed Campion has said that this was her original intention for Ada to die at the end, and then she thought, oh, why not have the happy ending? So a lot of great films do that kind of have your cake and eat it ending, where they have the happy ending, but the happy ending, could be a dream. And so for the cynics amongst you, the realists, it could be read as a tragic ending, which is totally fitting into the style of fiction that Campion was going for. Yeah, it's a wonderful film, and I enjoyed it this time just as much as when I originally watched it back in 95, 96, whenever that was. So that's it. That's my review for The Piano, and this just remains for me to say that this is me, Big Buddha, signing off. And until next time, I shall see you, all you folks out there in YouTube land.